Chapter 4. The thickets surrounding Impetus are made of genetically manufactured foliage, as dense and impenetrable as bushes, but stand as tall as the redwood trees that supposedly exist out yonder, assuming they survived. They are weapon and weatherproof, meaning no fire could burn them, and no man could chop them down. If someone walked by, they might not even notice a community behind the bushes. Birds are the only creatures with access, since there is nothing but open sky above Impetus. If birds didn't supposedly die off, that is. But I know the truth. I bypass the gardens, staying close to the shadows so no one notices my re-entry. The first building is one of two on the outskirts that have remained a mystery, unmarked with a coldness to the gray steel frame exterior. No one talks about these buildings, and I've never seen anyone go in or come out. I hurry past the building closest to the clinic. I find it disconcerting that such a menacing obscurity has been part of our small community for all these years.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Frank poses with a hose in his hand, watering the plants around the shed, his typical stance. I thought no one was around. My heartbeat kicks up a notch, my remedy watch vibrating against my wrist to alert me. I wonder if he saw me come out of the walls. Hi, Mr. Frank. I search for words to cover my tracks, some story to justify my need to be in this area. My mind, which never shuts down, is suddenly blank. It's a losing battle anyway. There's something about Mr. Frank's soulful brown eyes, set deep with aged kindness, that prevents me from lying to him. It's like he would still know the truth, and even if he didn't, he was the last person in the world I'd want to betray. He turns off the water and smiles at me.
Beautiful day today.
His voice is low and sweet, as though every word is a beautiful melody. Nodding, I agree. It is. You're working late tonight.
Well, it began with a visit to the clinic today that set me back a couple of hours.
Mr. Frank lifts his chin to the sky and chuckles.
I keep defying respite despite its attempts to get me. It can be a good thing to be a fighter, you know.
He brings his eyes back down to look pointedly into mine, like communicating a secret message I'm unable to decipher. He must know that I sneak out. Yes, he's covertly conveying he knows. This isn't the first time he's found me close to the edge of Impetus. I wonder if he knows how often, or even the reason, which is worse. It would put Gavin at risk, too. I should get to work. I'm reluctant to leave, a throbbing desire to ascertain his level of knowledge. There aren't many times the two of us are alone in conversation with no one else around. But there's no way for me to ask without blatantly breaking Impetus rules more than I already have.
Have a wonderful evening, Evangeline.
Mr. Frank turns the water back on.
By the way,
he folds the hose together, temporarily preventing the water from running.
I know you're graduating level 17 soon. You should know you've always been my favorite. You stand out, and that's not such a bad thing.
He releases the hose, humming as he moves to the side of the shed. The tone of his voice registered more like a goodbye than a compliment. Maybe it is goodbye in some sense. It may be the last time we talk if I become a paired. Or maybe his doctor's appointment earlier has him considering respite, community-wide quarantine of the elderly to prevent the onset of aging diseases from tainting others in Impetus. I wave at Mr. Frank. Even with a lanky body that has steadily stooped more over the years as his age continues to show, the top of his head is only a foot away from the shed's roof. He's the tallest person in Impetus, naturally ducking under every doorway he enters. Gavin informed me that in the before, buildings once stood as tall as 60 of our buildings stacked on top of one another, with doors sometimes quadrupled in size, simply for aesthetics. I've seen pictures, but never knew the facts behind them. These were demolished during the wars, and never rebuilt when officials discovered remedy need levels increase the higher from the ground a person climbs. The Lightstones are the only edifice set higher than all the other buildings, since they provide natural light for the community during the sleeping hours. But even they fail to compare in height to the thickets that surround Impetus. The Lightstones are now guarded every night because of an incident that happened not long after I was born. The legend is of a boy who believed he was a bird. He set out during the sleeping hours to climb the Lightstones. As he ascended higher and higher, his monitor beeped, warning him of the need for remedy to regulate his body's heartbeat. But he ignored the urgent warning. The boy only made it 2/3 of the way before his body stopped functioning, and he fell to his death. The tragedy triggered an even bigger problem when there was an unforeseen demand for extra pills to help community members comprehend the death of such a young life. The consequence resulted in a remedy shortage, causing several other lives to end because the community was underprepared to manufacture enough pills to save everyone. Impetus officials remind us of the story often, marveling at Remedy's power and emphasizing if we didn't have Remedy to rely on, there would have been many more deaths in that event. Remedy would have saved lives in the before, they always say, but at least we have it to save our lives today. However, when I brought up the story to Gavin, he paced back and forth, arguing Impetus's claim for the cause of death wasn't legitimate. According to him, the need for extra pills came from the stirrings of emotion that can still emerge in unusual situations. Because, as he explained in such a damning manner, despite modern science, we are still the same species of people from the before. It would have been better for everyone to feel than to take all the pills. Experiencing vast ranges of emotions helps us prepare for the unknowns that life throws our way. Taking excessive pills kills people, not mourning a person's death. If anyone in Impetus heard him say that, he would be promptly reported and punished. Those are the moments when I recognize it's a good thing Gavin isn't part of my community, despite wishing he was sometimes so I don't have to sneak out to see him. The story of the Lightstones legend has been shared with us for as long as I remember, a continual example used to showcase the importance of our rules and existence. This was also when they began to enforce A066, better deemed the curiosity ban, which makes both the thinking and asking of what, why, when, where, and how questions illegal.
Of course, quite reasonable, since it was the boy's unlawful curiosity of what being a bird would be like that ended his life, and those of some of his community members,
the teacher informed us. You're late. You've been running off with your imaginary friend again, Jacqueline whispers, her dark brown eyes presumptuously waiting for details as I walk through the clinic door. Shh. I glance around quickly, even though the waiting room is empty and Dr. Burdine is nowhere in sight. I wink at her. Maybe I was. Evangeline! Jacqueline waits for me to come around the corner of the front desk and then grabs my hands, forcing me to face her. Tell me details. I laugh, pulling my hands from her and directing my attention to the open appointment book on the desk. Jacqueline is always interested in the details of other people's lives and battles being unable to ask questions. But that's where we differ. All she questions is what other people do in their days. All of my questions are about Impetus and why they hide things from us. However, since her rebellious curiosity is a smaller-scale replica of mine, we bonded earlier than most other people in Impetus. When I first met Gavin, I ran back to the community, joining my level mates in the Proppers A cafeteria. Once I found Jacqueline, I pulled her to the back of the room, away from earshot of all the others. In hushed whispers, I told her about the strange boy I met that lives in the woods. Jacqueline, esteemed as one of the smartest students in each level, put her tiny 6-year-old hands on her hips and replied, "People don't live in the woods. They would be dead. We can't see dead people." Even at such a young age, her confidence and beliefs in the world created for us were so strong that it made me doubt for a moment whether I had indeed met a boy that lived in the woods. When I returned the next day to the same spot to prove Gavin was real, he taught me the dangers of sharing stories of his existence. After promising him I wouldn't tell anyone, I never mentioned him to Jacqueline again. But I did continue to see Gavin most days that followed. We were 9 years old when Jacqueline vocally observed I was disappearing more often. She was my assigned partner, so it was natural for her to be the first to notice. Ethan always stole her attention, though, so I could get away with it for a while without her saying anything. Jacqueline never forgets details, so in reference to 3 years earlier when I told her about the boy who lives in the woods, she would say I was visiting my imaginary friend. It became a regular joke between us, but I could always tell she wondered about the truth. There were days when I learned something so amazing from Gavin that I wanted to rush back to Impetus to share it with Jacqueline. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Suddenly, I lived in 2 different worlds I couldn't blend as much as I wanted to.
They wouldn't understand, Evie. You would put yourself and me at risk,
Gavin told me repeatedly. But if they knew what you've told me... His eyes narrowed in on me, his tone firm and rasp.
They aren't meant to know. End of discussion.
I have a lot of secrets over the years because of Gavin. I also have a lot of my own. Did you get today's charts filled out? I flipped the pages of the appointment book until I reached today's date. I've become skilled at changing the subject, just like Gavin. Jacqueline sighs, loudly throws herself on the chair next to me, and leans back into the table. She stares at me until I turn to face her. Her thin bottom lip juts out in a strained pout. Ignoring her antics, I follow up with, "Did you check inventory and the cube levels?" Realizing I will not expand on my whereabouts, Jacqueline sighs again, louder for theatrical emphasis, spins around once in the chair, and leaps up. "No, Miss Evangeline, I'll go do that right now." She slowly walks backward down the hallway to the office in the back, keeping her eyes on me and the pout on her face evident. As she disappears in the room, she pops her head out one more time, sticks her tongue out at me, and slams the door. The closed door to the right of it immediately swings open. Dr. Burdine walks out, with one hand behind his back and the other scratching his looming belly, which has steadily grown over the past 4 years I have worked in his office.
Is there a problem?
"No, Doctor. The wind must have caught the door." Dr. Burdine runs his hand through his thinning red hair as he peers over his tiny glasses.
Tell me the schedule for this afternoon.
"We only have 3 patients scheduled, sir. Mr. Celticlane, Mr. Kevin, and Mr. Streedlink."
Very good.
Dr. Burdine walks back to his office, but stops once outside the door, his back still turned to me. Taking off his glasses and rubbing them with the sleeve of his white coat jacket, he says,
"Oh, and please tell Jacqueline to be a little nicer to the office interior."
Putting his glasses back on his tiny nose, he returns to his office, the door carefully shutting behind him for emphasis. I frequently serve as the primary communicator between Dr. Burdine and Jacqueline. They do not understand each other, and make it clear that limited interaction is the preference for both parties. If the rumors are true about her being the next doctor, avoiding Dr. Burdine won't help since she's not learning as planned from this experience. Dr. Burdine also doesn't seem keen on Jacqueline being the one to take over his position. I wonder if the Elders Board's plans for her have changed. We are nearing the end of level 17. Soon they will tell us the decisions they made for how the rest of our lives will be spent. A true risk exists that the outcome will lead to the first time since we were infants that we are separated and put in different groups, paired and unpaired. The only thing we will have as a link is the line female group our first names will forever have in common. After work, Jacqueline and I walk back to Proper's C together. It's a shorter distance to go around the edge of the community circle to get home from the clinic than to go through the center of town to get there. However, we both decided years ago that we would rather take the longer route through Impetus. I don't like walking past the peculiar steel sheds as the sun fades because the shadows grow deeper and darker. And Jacqueline enjoys seeing whoever she can from the community. Our reasons are vastly different. 4 evenly spaced streets diagonally connect the lightstones in the center of Impetus to the surrounding thickets that incline at a higher elevation, creating the circular design of our community. Resting between the streets are rows of buildings, each cluster with a distinct purpose to serve, like the Propers and the Cooperative, essential in maintaining a well-functioning community. We descend Street B to the center, while Jacqueline conveys a story about how she and Ethan tried to create a song out of Pauline's signature, never-ending tapping of her fingers and feet. When we were younger, we used to complain about the noise from Pauline's fidgetiness. Over the years, we've gotten used to it and expect to hear it every time she's around. I laugh distractedly at Jacqueline's story, my mind more focused on the people lined up behind the monitor cubes. As we walk by, I listen for the steady beep of each person's monitors, reminding them to take their required remedy dosage immediately. Most of the community members in line are part of the workforce. It is one of the most common times for remedy levels to become sporadic, especially for the unpaired. Gavin threw a large rock against a tree the day he heard they increased my remedy dosage after I had spent a week analyzed by the clinic. I'll never forget the sound piercing the sky, pieces of the trunk breaking apart, and a large butterfly escaping its perch. Won't that alert people we are out here?
You have to be kidding me.
Gavin ignored my question, his chest quickly rising and falling, a vein in his neck threatening to push through his skin.
They keep increasing it for everyone. This isn't right. You don't need it.
I shrugged. If they say I do, I probably do. They ran all the tests.
Did you know there once was no need for a monitor? They would just give everyone 2 doses of remedy a day. But once some idiot created the monitor, they gave people more and more. Our bodies aren't meant to have more.
As usual, I disagreed, but kept my mouth shut. He didn't live in Impetus, so I couldn't blame him for not fully understanding. But it always made me wonder how his community functions. I couldn't imagine not having the monitor, and was thankful I was born after they created it. When a person's levels get too low, a yellow light flashes, and a beep steadily sounds until the proper remedy dosage is taken. Without remedy, the beeping speed and volume increases as the need becomes more severe, and the light changes from yellow to orange to red. A few people have claimed to see the orange light, but no one alive has seen red. Red means it's too late, and your last breath is near. Gavin has made me doubt a lot of things in Impetus, but that is the one thing he can never change my mind on. The survival rate is better with the wrist monitor. I wouldn't sneak out to visit him without it. Maybe if he knew that, he'd give a little more credit to the man who invented it.